gentlemen, we're in for an incredible night. Oh, we're taking it up a notch. I can't believe what I'm seeing right now. Wes and Mike TZ coming all strong.
Welcome back, everybody. Today we're doing something a little bit different. I am here with the Grand Dominatrix, TJ, also known as Bajar Hodgepodge, and
Yeah.
we are talking about a topic that's really kind of important to me. It's at the center of a lot of things that I do with my writing, and also important to TJ because we're going to talk about his world of fashion a little bit, but in a different way. So we want to have a chat, like an eye-opening chat, right, about the interconnectedness of anti-blackness, anti-fatness, and how that intersects with fashion as well. And so I hope you guys enjoy it. And here we go. TJ, how are you doing?
I am very good. I let me just address the elephant that's not in the room. I'm sure everybody's like, "Well, where is Chris?" The answer is we killed him. So, um, but I am good. I am good, and I'm ready to have this conversation because, I mean, yes, we're going to talk about fashion, but that's, I mean, not the main reason that I am present for this conversation. The main reason I'm present for this conversation is that I too am fat. And so yeah,
Are you though?
I am, I don't show this stomach a lot for that very reason, but it's very present and prominent. So yeah.
I would have never described you as fat. I always just thought you were thick bottom goodness.
Well, I will take that as well. But yeah, I do have a stomach. That in fact I'm going to the gym tonight to work on specifically this stomach. But yeah, and I've had it my whole
Well,
life. Like I've been husky, pudgy, overweight, every word you can think of, like my whole entire life. My weight has gone up and down, but yeah.
before we get into this, I do want to say that I have had a very troubled relationship with the word husky. I remember being like 7, maybe 7 years old, and you know how kids get super excited to go to the store to buy new school clothes, right? And I
Mhm.
remember being in the store with my mom, and she was looking for some pants for me for school, and it was JC Penney. I'll never forget it. And the woman came over, and she was just like, "Oh, yeah, no, you're not gonna find his size over here, but the husky boy section is down the way." And I just remember thinking to myself, "Hey, you bitch." At
the
7, I
the
caught
husky boy
moving in my
section.
head.
Yeah.
The husky boy section.
Funny
But
enough,
anyway, go ahead.
obviously, well, not obviously, because I mean, not everybody knows this, but I used to work at JCPenney part time,
Mhm.
and there was, yeah, and they still call it husky. They still call it husky. Those larger sizes for the boys, they're still called husky.
I just think that's so like detrimental. Okay.
I don't know. I find it kind of cute, husky. That's why this is cute. Oh, he's a cute little husky boy. I don't know, but
That label is for puppies.
I know I do agree with that. I do agree with that. Is Chris fucking with our shit?
He is
Chris
producer.
not fucking with our shit.
Producer Edwards is doing his thing in the background, child. He ain't on
Golly.
the screen, but he is present. Trust me.
I don't know. I just think maybe what would be a better word for
I don't think.
those?
I don't think there should be a word. They should just put the sizes out there.
Okay, okay.
I don't know. That's the way I think about
That
it.
makes
But
sense.
so to start our conversation, I will go ahead and give a very general definition of what I believe anti-fatness to be. And I think that it refers to discrimination and prejudice faced by individuals based on their body size, right? Or a
Hmm.
societal bias that manifests in various ways, like fat shaming, body policing, and really how bodies are represented in media. So I think that's a kind of broad definition of how to understand anti-fatness. How do you perceive that?
I the same. I would agree.
Okay.
Yeah, it's this um aversion. It's this
Yeah.
aversion to this repulsion of um bodies that are larger than a certain size, or have,
Yeah,
a couple of extra pounds, or a muffin top, or a couple of muffins on the top. Um, yeah, it's basically that. It's like, if you don't fit this certain mold,
mm,
um, then you are automatically looked at as less than, less attractive, etc.
exactly. So I was also thinking about how a lot of people talk about anti-fatness as if it just exists in a space where there are no other intersectional arrangements for this sort of discrimination. And so in my mind, for me specifically, I think is what I'm thinking about is how it impacts me, and it never impacts me in a way that's not connected to my identity as a Black man, and specifically as a Black gay man, right? But
Mhm.
if you think about the connection between anti-fatness and race, is really a connection that's probably not visible for most people if you're not thinking about it. Like, do you automatically connect race and anti-fatness?
No, I never have actually. Until I watched the video that you shared with me, which I think we should probably share that in the show notes when this gets published too.
Yeah.
No, I
Shout out to
never.
Foreign Man for bringing this topic to the forefront of my mind. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Um, and so, to be honest, as I was watching when I first got into the video, because it's like 45 minutes long, I think.
Yeah.
And so when they made that claim the first time, I was like, now I do believe a lot of stuff is anti-Black and is racist, and a lot of stuff basically boils down to that. But I was like, anti-fatness? I don't know about this. Only because I had never thought of it in that context before.
Mm-hmm.
However, throughout as the video progressed and they explained more and cited sources and all of this, I was like, yeah, okay, it's making sense. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, prior to the video, I had never made that connection.
Okay. So for the folks, the good folks at home, we can talk about how anti-fatness is connected to race, and it's connected in a couple of different ways. Well, actually, more than a couple, several, many different ways. And so, anti-Blackness is just this insidious thing that you find at the base of so many systems in the way that they're constructed, in ways that promotes the prominence of people who are not Black, right? It's an unearned privilege that these people have. And so I I think about it by understanding how it impacts like stereotypes and culture bias, beauty standards, health disparities, cultural perceptions, and really how people are represented in like media spaces. And what that is really saying is how media plays a big role in perpetuating how anti-fatness and racial stereotypes work together, especially those about from minority groups like who already have negative biases associated with their identities. And it can really be a problem. But I want to move from talking about it in such a opaque kind of academic way and really kind of relate it to my own experiences. I think that's probably more interesting to the people they're gonna watch this later on. So for me, I experience anti-fatness in ways that are sometimes only perceptible to me. I remember when a long time ago, I used to say things to Brian when we would go different places like restaurants, or we would go to movie theaters or whatever. And you walk into the room and if you're a certain size, and I know that part of it is the fact that I'm super tall, right? But the rest
Mhm.
of it is the fact that I'm fat. And so you walk into a room and people will take a little gasp. They stop what they're doing to watch you.
Mm.
And so for a long time, he felt like it was just in my head. Like he didn't notice it. And he was like, babe, I think that you're just making it, you're expecting it to be that. And so when you walk into places, you think that's what it is. And until he started to notice it for himself, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's almost like gaslighting a little bit. Like I'm imagining this thing that people are doing or saying, and it doesn't really happen. And I just wish that more people were aware of or were willing to listen to the experiences of fat people. But I think that the reality that non-fat people live in provide a safe space for them not to have to be bothered with the bias levied against larger bodies.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I can't I can't say that that's anything, that particular example, that I have ever experienced, but I will also say I feel that I'm so much in my head most of the time, and I'm not paying attention to what other people are doing, that it very well could be happening, and I'm just like, child, there's so much processing up here that I can't focus on
Yeah,
what's going on out here.
right.
Um, so it's possible. You mentioned like it's kind of like gaslighting. Um, so sometimes when people tell me their experience that I don't have an experience with,
Mhm.
I do try to I'm conscious of not gaslighting.
Yeah,
So just like I said, okay, you had that experience, but I don't think I've ever had that experience. No, I would just say something like, that's not something that I noticed. Like,
mhm,
let's say you and I went out and that happened and
mhm.
you noticed it and I didn't. I would just be like, well, I didn't particularly notice that thing, but that's not to say it didn't happen. It just means
Right.
I just didn't see it. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
I was not attuned or aware of that particular thing. That sucks that happens. But honestly, in my mind, I would just be like, girl, yes, I am here. Take a look.
Yeah.
Take
So
all of this in.
yeah, absolutely. So the older I got, the more I was able to get to a place where it was like when I feel people staring at me, it's like,
Yeah. Hi, you're
you
welcome.
want some?
Okay.
Like, is that what it is? Like, what are we
Yeah.
really talking about? But at first, but that's somewhere you have to arrive, right? So when you think about like years of being fat and the taunting, the teasing, the exclusionary reality of fatness amongst just people who aren't fat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then it takes a minute to kind of redirect that energy and figure out how to exist as fully yourself without shrinking or being ashamed or whatever. Some people are born with that sort of bravado, and some of us have to teach it to ourselves. And I think I was probably the latter.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so but it makes me think about this whole thing about um the body positivity movement, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I feel a little conflicted about body positivity. How do you feel about it?
So interestingly enough, a couple of weeks ago, I was listening to a podcast. I can't remember which one it was, but it was a podcast that featured an episode of another podcast. But basically, they were talking about um, a lot of things, but mainly like women's bodies and how, of course, especially Black women's bodies, and how how the Black woman's body is critiqued and looked at and picked apart and all this, and how it can never be perfect and all that. And one of the guests, I guess, on the podcast was talking about how she doesn't really care for that term body positivity
Yeah,
because
same.
it I hope I won't get this wrong. It kind of forces other people to feel a positive way about your body, where that may not necessarily they may not be necessary. I think she said that she prefers like body acceptance. Like
Mhm,
you may not have a positive reaction to my body, but you must accept it.
mm,
Um, and I had never really thought of it that way, so I found that very interesting. So, as far as I guess the way I feel about body positivity, it may be, I don't know, changing. So, however many years ago, when we saw this term, I guess, arise, obviously I was all for it because I'm like, yes,
right,
more positivity towards all kinds of
right.
bodies. But yeah, I think obviously as time goes on and more nuances are added to all of these, terms that we come up with, I think the terms will have to change. So, and I like the way she said it, body acceptance as opposed to body positivity.
I'm still kind of struggling with body acceptance too, because I really don't want to get into the business of forcing somebody to accept something about me that they don't have to. But what I do think is necessary is diversity and equality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think equality and diversity are a little bit different than acceptance. You may not accept that my body is ideal or beautiful or great for me. That's fine. But what you won't do is not make space for me in public spaces in ways that you do for everyone else.
Yeah.
And right now, that's not the current climate. Like, sometimes I get to this place with people and having this conversation and they want to argue about, oh, things are changing. It used to be like that. And to that, I say, until you have had to publicly ask for a seatbelt extender on an airplane,
Mm-hmm.
miss me with that. It ain't like that no more. Right. Like,
Yeah.
for example, I'm going on vacation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people tease me about being whatever, that, oh, you only fly first class and blah blah. Part of the reason I only fly first class is to avoid the bullshit
Mm-hmm.
in other sections of the plane, the
Mm-hmm.
looks, the stares, the whatever that you encounter from people hoping that you're not sitting next to them,
Right.
because they think that you're gonna fold over into their seat while you're on the plane or whatever. We don't
Yeah.
have to go like all into it or whatever. But my point is that I make specific arrangements to accommodate my size so that I can have a good time like everybody else, because a
Yeah.
good time is not insured me
Right.
simply by paying what everybody else would pay
Yeah.
to go and do a thing,
Right.
right? I can't go to amusement park. And you know what? It's crazy that I'm talking about it this way because, yeah, I am a fat person, but I wouldn't describe myself as a fat person who is like mobility impaired or who needs like all these special accommodations. Part of my thing is just I'm 6'5" and I'm also fat. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like a double whammy. But it
Mm-hmm.
also is a problem because I'm black, right? And
Right.
so I'm automatically a threat in public. Not just
Mm-hmm.
because I'm black, because I'm fat and because I'm larger than the average person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't feel bad about that. I just need to have the basic human rights that everybody else has. That's
Right.
all I'm saying.
Yeah. 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 I
Yeah,
agree. And as so what you said as far as like automatically being perceived as a threat, I get that, but not obviously I don't have your same experience because I'm not as tall as you.
right.
And so, yes, there
Or
are
it's dark,
or it's dark.
right,
And so yeah, there are times where I do when I'm out in the world or out in public that I do have to think about how I am perceived. And I think this is probably true for most black people, especially most
probably.
conscious black people.
I agree.
And so I can just imagine how my experience or how your experience may be, no pun intended, heightened from from mine
Right,
because I am shorter, I'm smaller. And
right,
so while I do exist in this black skin, and unfortunately that is automatically perceived as a threat, perhaps I'm not as, again, no pun intended, perhaps I'm not as large of a threat as you are perceived because of your stature.
right,
Yeah.
right. Like, have you ever, like it's like the thing here? I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but like walking into an elevator and all the people shift to the back of the elevator so they don't have to stand near you or whatever. Which, by the way, is my favorite thing. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I love that because I mean, it's probably the reason I avoided COVID for as long as I did. But
Mhm.
on top of that, it's just you see it just happens all the time,
Yeah.
or whatever. Or when you walk into a restaurant and the waitress grabs a menu and then she looks at you and she's like, well, we have some tables over this way and such and such. Like
Mm.
it's like little things people don't even really think about.
Yeah.
Like if I'm gonna go see a play, is it gonna be enough space? Like, because
Right.
they make these things to pack as many people in as possible. It's a financial benefit,
Mm-hmm.
So if you make space for larger people, then perhaps you won't have as many seats. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
Yeah. Going
yeah.
back to like the airplane example, like I remember when I was heavier, when I was larger, like, and I've never flown first class. So I've always just flown in the, regular seats or whatever. I do remember when I was larger how less comfortable that those seats were because they are so small. And then of
Right.
course trying to get through the aisle, which is only this big anyway, and you got luggage and maybe got so it is, yeah, it is definitely it's definitely an experience that larger people have that smaller people do not have to
Child,
worry about.
imagine not only having your back fat pinched, but also having your knees crushed at the same time.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Because you ain't got no leg room.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's like, and it's just this constant. I have been at war with my body since I was a little boy. Like, I remember the first time my mom said something to me about my weight, and it was like that whole "let me force you to be active in sports." One, it'll make you tough, wink, but
Mm-hmm.
also it'll help you with exercise, and you won't feel so like
Yeah,
you'll shrink and
yeah.
all this other stuff. And I was relatively small then, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think even I didn't get super fat until after high school because I
Mm.
was still active and all this other stuff. And then, of course, I've lost weight since then. I still think I'm too big, but I wonder how much of the way I perceive my body is still rooted in the same anti-fatness and anti-blackness that we're discussing. Because I feel like the way I think about how I look is not all my own shit. It's the culmination of all the things I've encountered over
Yep.
the years. And like, I try to, you know, rid myself of that sort of rhetoric and try to do what makes me feel good and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, it's still the reality. There's an ideal circumstance and there's a reality that you actually have to live in. And so those two things are often not aligned specifically for Black fat bodies. It's just the truth.
This is, yeah,
So, you
that is.
know, I'm really glad that we're having this conversation because it gives me an opportunity to kind of really share some of my thoughts about this thing in a way that I don't think we've ever talked about before between the two of us. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with me going back to, I guess, childhood is like, so several years ago I was looking at like some old pictures of me like when I was a kid, and I was slim. I was not slim, but I was small. I was a kid. I was small,
yeah,
and I wasn't like, I wouldn't call myself like pudgy or anything. So I think I always joke about this. I think it was after elementary school is when I started to gain weight, and I think it was because my dad, God rest his soul, used to pack in my lunch like PB&J sandwiches like every day, and I would eat them every day. um,
and you love them.
and I loved them. To this day, I love a PB&J. But yeah, I feel like after sometime in elementary school, maybe right after elementary school, is when I started to put on weight. And so I was always husky. I was always, a larger kid. And it, it would always, there would be times when my weight would be a issue for me. One of them was like going shopping. I know we'll talk about that a little bit later, but one was going shopping. And two was like going to like an amusement park or something like that, or the fair where you had to get on a ride and there was some type of seatbelt or restraint. And you mentioned this
Right.
earlier, like a seatbelt extender. Well, I specifically remember like going, there was this place we used to go to where there were go-karts, and I used to love to get on the go-kart. But every time, I knew every single time that I got into the go-kart that I didn't need an extension or an extender, but I was gonna have to finagle the clip and and extend it
Squeeze
that
yourself
way.
into it.
Exactly. And I could never do it myself. And I would always have to ask the attendant for help, and I hated it because nobody else needed that help. And so they would always have to come over and extend it out and then do that thing. But then, like I said, at the fair, when you get on certain rides, the bar has to come down.
Yeah.
It would always press on my stomach and it would hurt. It would be uncomfortable.
But you wanted to ride and have fun like the other kids.
Exactly. So now I'm like, okay, I'm on the ride. I'm kind of having fun, but also there's this pressure on my stomach. So yeah, it was just always such a thing.
You just took me back to my very first, like, vividly remembered traumatic moment as a teenager. I remember being in band and I waited all year long because I was so excited that the band was going into Six Flags. And I was like, oh yeah, because we got to get out of school. The other kids were still at school. The band was going to go to Six Flags. It was a day for just like bands from all the different schools. And I was so excited. And me and my friends, we walked around. It was hot, but I was excited. I stood in line for this roller coaster called the Texas Giant for like almost an hour. And I get to the front of the line and the guy was like, "You're not going to fit."
Oh my God.
And I had to walk back down in front of all the people.
That's the worst.
I was so embarrassed.
Yeah.
I was so embarrassed. And I think part of that shame, I still live with that. Like, of course I deactivated as an adult, but like, even thinking about that moment now, I kind of like, I feel a little triggered. Like,
yeah,
it was just one of those moments that I just will never forget. And it's not even about the not getting the ride. It was the walk of shame back down.
Yeah, you were made to feel othered. You were an other in that moment, and you weren't. And I'm sure it came as a shock because you weren't even expecting it. It's like,
right.
I'm hyping myself up. I'm in line. I'm so ready for this thing. I get there, and all of a sudden they're like, no.
I was just trying to overcome the fear of having to ride the ride because I was like, oh, it's gonna be scary and this, that, and the other. And Charles.
Yeah. It's unfair. It's unfair.
Yeah, so I mean, I know all kids have traumatic stories and they get, embarrassed, or they have these things that they live with or whatever. But it's the truth of the matter is that this is mine. And so like the way that I hold on to that manifested in self-soothing and dieting and going back and forth. And like, I've even gone to the extreme of having weight loss surgery, and I've done all the things to lose weight. But I'm thankful, and I'm gonna tell you why I'm thankful. Because for me, the adversity of being overweight is the reason why I am how I am. Being Black, being gay, and being fat is the reason why people say that I'm a Renaissance man and why I do so many things. Is because I always felt like if I could get to this place where I could be super excellent at everything, if I could be the smartest at a thing, if I could be the best at a thing, then it would grant me the sort of like cachet or acceptance that other people get just by virtue of good genes. And it made me try really hard in like all the other areas of my life. And so because of that, I have an assortment of skills. I have an assortment of outlets of things I like to do and that I'm good at. And it's really kind of changed the trajectory of what I am. And I always knew that if I couldn't do anything else right, if I couldn't be thin, if I couldn't be straight, if I couldn't be all these things, at the very least, I knew that I was smart. I knew that I was clever, and I knew that I'd find a way to be rich and beautiful.
Not rich and beautiful. Yeah, I think so. Not to
go for it.
Not to conflate things, but I've heard a number of people say this, and they were specifically talking about disability. So I'm not trying to
Yeah,
say
no, it's a
that
disability,
is a
child. Go on.
disability, but the one person that comes to mind is Sinead Burke, and she is a person that does live with a disability, but she basically said that like your lived experience is like your superpower. So your other experience allows you to see the world from a perspective different from anybody else, or different from the majority, or different from most other people, and therefore you have keen insight on things that other people don't even see, or
Right.
you operate in the world differently in a way that is different than other people, because of your lived experience, and because of all the things that you've gone through, or because of your your disability or whatever. And so I think that's part of the reason why I kind of say like everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Like we experience our experience. We, the cards that we were dealt, or whatever, however you want to say it, we experience our experience for a reason. And no one is going to have the same perspective as us. No one is going to have the same thoughts as us, the same lens that we see things through. And that's what just makes us unique.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I was thinking about how you mentioned about clothes, and so that kind of brings me back to our chat about how anti-fatness impacts fashion, right? And so when you think about, and I know this seems kind of like we went from this heavy thing to this light thing, but it's really just equal to me, because how you express yourself through your style and what you wear becomes a part of your identity, becomes a part of your how you see yourself and how you want other people to see you. And so when people talk about the things that they put on their bodies, how they adorn their bodies, it becomes something that's very important to them, And so for me, I am always thinking about how there's this roadblock to being able to look and feel like I want to feel in clothes. I don't know if you've experienced that or not. I'm sure everybody has a brand that they want to wear that hasn't necessarily produced a size that they can fit, but I'm just talking about like minimum shit. Oh, you're on mute, friend.
My bad. So at some point, somehow my AirPods connected. I don't know how. And so I guess when they disconnected, it muted me. Anyway.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't even have them in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm very confused. But anyway, yeah, a white t-shirt is the bane of my existence.
Yes.
But I love the look of a white t-shirt, but the way I've yet to find a white t-shirt that fits me the way I see it in my head, because of my stomach. And because it is white, the way the silhouette that it gives, I'm just
makes a panda face.
It does. And it
light and shadow from the fat dimples. I'm telling you, I know.
It accentuates the muffin top, which is what I do not want. I don't want that. And so every time I'm like, I would love to be able to wear a white t-shirt, but when I put it on, I'm like, yeah, no, that's not the silhouette that I'm going for. So yeah, something as simple as a white t-shirt, which everybody wears, it for me is just like, yeah, no.
It's more like a loaf top, but I'll give you muffin. But yeah, that panda face and the white t-shirt. That's why I always, I always wear black t-shirts, like just in general. And it also impacts like what colors I choose and when I can find things or whatever. And we're not even talk about the designer fashion houses. We're just gonna skip right over that. That's a movement. We all know that they not doing what the fuck they need to do when it comes to body diversity. But but the size range is a problem for fashion, right? The way that bodies are represented, because like, don't go on a big and tall website and expect to see somebody that's legitimately big and tall. You're going to see somebody who is tall and may eat bread still.
Right.
But they're not necessarily what you would see as big and tall. And so, and I think that you see that whole spillover of body diversity and body positivity going into fashion, and they're trying to address it with the least amount of effort possible, is what I think. But
100%, I agree. It's like the brands, designers will throw in, I guess specifically if we're talking like runway or whatever, they'll throw in one or two
maybe
plus size models or whatever, and be like,
plus
hey,
size
look.
being a size 10.
Exactly. And this is, I'm gonna bring up her name, and this is not to shade her, Precious Lee, but she's like the main plus size model for all of these fashion houses. And I'm like, great for her, she's getting work. I love that. But I'm like, where are the other girls? Where are the other people? You know what I mean? Like, come on now. So I'm quite ready to see more body diversity in fashion, obviously. But yeah, it's always been a struggle for me. Even again, when I was a kid, like I remember, I'm telling a lot about my parents. I remember when I was a kid, so ages ago, when I was a kid, my mom got laid off from her job, right? And now as a kid, you don't know how that process goes. You just know your parent isn't working anymore.
Right.
Undoubtedly, she got a severance. And when I tell you we would go shopping every week, like, and we never did that before when she was working. So that was some of the greatest times of my life.
Yes, mama.
But we would go to this place called Marty's. And it was like a little local shop. But it was called Marty's. And I used to fucking love going to Marty's. Because one, they had really cute stuff, and two, they had stuff that was in my size. I think it was primarily like a kind of a big and tall kind of store, whatever, especially for boys. Or it may not have been. I think they may have just had like a good section or a selection for larger clothes. But yeah, it was always like you have to find, the larger sizes. And of course, the larger sizes are going to cost more because there's more material in the whatever. And so it was always like, I feel like that's so unfair. But yeah, it's more, I feel as though it is more work. And I'm saying this again, coming from my experience. I don't have the experience of someone being slender or skinny or whatever.
Right.
I feel as though it is more challenging for people in larger bodies to find clothing items that not only fit but fit well,
make them look good, look
yeah,
anything like they hope to look.
yeah. And that's
but that's another form of exclusion, and it's just insane. Like, it's insane that it's okay, but also because being fat is the last vestige of bigotry that is acceptable. There is no motivation until very recently for designers and manufacturers to do anything differently than they've done prior to now. So it's just one of those things. I don't want to I don't want it to seem as if we expect companies to make sizes off the bat for anybody that you can ever think of or dream of, right? That's not the expectation. However, there should be more options for people of a certain size. That's all I'm saying.
I agree. And even though I won't say the name of this brand, but that brand that you and I were looking at that eventually did not work out, I think clothing items like that, because they make clothing items like they say one size fit all. So they don't have sizes on their website or in their pieces, and everything is kind of made to fit like kind of oversized. I think at least that's a step in the right direction. Because it's like, okay, cool. You're getting this nicely crafted garment, and I can wear it as it comes, or I can have it tailored to fit my body regardless of how or what my size is or how large or small I am. So I think more brands, more production like that would be good.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I do think slowly but surely, I do think we're going in the right direction, and I do think we need more designers who have the lived experience of larger bodies.
That's the crazy part. A lot of these designers, they asses are fat too. So like, I don't understand. Like,
This
if
is true.
if you know you got to get something made for yourself, like why wouldn't you make something? Most of these people do not make clothes that they themselves can wear. They are
Yeah.
indulging in an idealized body size and a fantasy that they think will allow their designs to look as best as possible, which in and of itself is a judgment, right? Because you have decided that this body isn't attractive. And so you don't imagine your garments on that sort of body. And I think overall from this conversation, like what I'm really trying to get at after having watched that video and talking with you about it is I really just want people to recognize the ongoing need for inclusivity and diversity and representation across the fashion industry, across healthcare, across media, and how that sort of non-inclusivity or diversity is intersecting with anti-Blackness.
Right. Yeah.
So that's pretty much where I think we land on this conversation.
I agree.
So, you have any parting thoughts you'd like to share with the community?
No, I think we've covered like everything.
Is Chris gonna pop in and say hi to everybody?
He might. Let's see.
Since he's producing us.
He been lurking.
Oh, he said, "Fuck y'all."
He said, "Fuck y'all."
It's time to go. Get off the motherfucking line, punk. Okay, well, I guess that's it for me.
Hey y'all. Hope y'all enjoyed this conversation.
Thanks.
Chris, remember you gotta hit the button.
Yes.